Welcome to Ecotopia U Media. I'm your host, Melissa McGinnis, joined by my co-host, Tom Wright. We are here in lovely downtown Los Angeles at the CRRA conference. We have a very special guest with us right now, Mr. Kreigh.
Kreigh, yeah.
Kreigh
Hampel.
Nice to meet you, and thank you for visiting with us today. I know you're doing some really important work here in the LA area, but primarily Burbank.
Right. I'm the recycling coordinator with the city, and I kind of approach this from a biologist's view, that our recycling work really should concentrate on systems and loops and you know, all those good things like right livelihoods. How do you engage neighbors and get the community working in the same direction? So there's a lot to it. It's a little bit of psychology, sociology, material science, and a little bit of magic stirred in.
It's a plethora.
It is.
So how do you get the community involved and engaged?
Yeah. The last couple of years we've done something that I'm really happy with, and that's we have a master recycling class. And it's a way for neighbors to get together and have conversations that they've never really had before. They have a lot of questions about, they always have the basic questions about what can be recycled, how are things done, where does it go, what happens to it. And so we get to sit down and not only talk about, you know, those common questions, but we also talk about the push and pull between manufacturers, legislators, you know, local programs, and how those things play out. So we go all the way from backyard composting all the way to extended producer responsibility. And they get, you know, it's a little taste. It's not an in-depth, you know, college degree program, but what it is it's a great way for neighbors to get excited about how they can do things better and how they can work in the same direction. So that's been a lot of fun. And then we do a lot of the day-to-day outreach. We do classes and workshops. We do school programs. We speak to elected officials. We talk to Chamber of Commerce's. We give testimony at hearings. We do a little bit of lobbying with elected officials. So all those things come into play as a recycling coordinator.
How did you even get this position?
By luck.
No,
chance.
Come on. Give us a little background of the path of
well,
Kreigh.
you know, like many people, it's a long, winding road, and you know, if I go back, you know, 30, 40 years, I was a carpenter, I was a landscaper, a master gardener. I started working with nonprofits and school gardens, and ended up going through a UCLA certificate program in waste management, thinking I wasn't going to use it, because I wasn't really that interested in garbage. But as things played out, it was a perfect segue. I was building educational displays for cities and working on a lot of their workshops and teaching. And so when this position came up, it sort of fit. You know, things kind of dropped into place. So I think I draw from a lot of parts of the world, and again, you know, like I said, I think more like a biologist than an engineer or a scientist, and I also think like a sociologist, because I think most of our problems of waste are in our own behaviors, and really we get stuck on our aesthetics. You know, we'll look at something and we'll go, that just doesn't look right to me, and we can't really reverse engineer those feelings and aesthetics and those first impressions and how they last with us. But I think of things like lawns and landscapes, and we want that curb appeal. You know, we want that beautiful green glow. And here in the Southern California, it just means we're burning the reservoirs down. And you know, to get the convenience of packaging and, you know, these cute little individual packages of lots of things, it's cute. It's an aesthetic. I've had people say, "Oh, I like those square boxes. They look modern," and you know. But there's all these issues when we respond to things that are purely from an aesthetic and not from a functional place. And that's where the sociology comes in, you know, the sort of psychology. How do you find champions who can bring life to this new conversation?
Well, I totally agree with you that it's a behavioral issue, and then I think the aesthetic comes behind that in terms of, if we had a new learning or a new sense of behavior in terms of what we thought was curb appeal, maybe the sustainable gardens now are considered
xeriscaped landscape is acceptable now for curb appeal, as long as you have the right mix of cacti and some green things that somehow survive with very little water.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. But we also have. I was just thinking this morning. We had a period of time. Go back 20 years ago. People didn't. There were complaints about the looks of photovoltaics on roofs, right? There were complaints because people said, "Oh, that doesn't look good on the top of my roof to have solar panels." Or the Prius, oh, it's too squatty and too, it just doesn't look sporty. So we always have to kind of roll over that piece of us that kind of sits still for a while. We have to kind of work through those new.
I mean, the gas guzzling GTO isn't what I wanted in life.
Oh no, I still rev mine up every time.
I was about to say, yeah. Tell us a little bit about how'd you end up in Burbank? How did that?
Burbank was one of those things where I had moved from Portland, Oregon, and we were about to move to Santa Monica when the house arrangement that we had didn't work out, and we were looking at other neighborhoods, and it was kind of a combination of affordability. We had a son that was in school. We had a number of things that kind of lined up well for us, and it was a one-year experiment, and 30 years later, we're still there.
Now, Burbank, NBC is headquartered in Burbank.
We've got a lot of studios. NBC has been sold, but we have Warner Brothers, Disney headquarters. We have a lot of smaller production companies who have grown quite large, actually. Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and we've got game makers and all sorts of people that work in media. So the entire town has kind of gone from a aerospace neighborhood to a media neighborhood.
And how does this either characterize their waste management behavior, or do they have a personality that's quote unquote an industry personality about this? Or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's actually a good question because Hollywood is known for extravagance. Okay. And a lot of big budgets on films, a lot of materials going through the studios. But actually, they've done quite well. Warner Brothers had some great people that were working together 15, 20 years ago almost, and starting to set some directions on their recycling, on their energy equations, transportation, all sorts of things. And so now they have a lot of donation programs. They try to get the sets reused. A lot of those things are, they're really doing a pretty good job of keeping those things, reusing them basically as much as they can. There's still a lot of stuff that goes through, just huge sets that you can't find a home for, and there's a lot of oddball, one-of-a-kind things that just aren't very commonly used again. So.
Does that come across your desk, and are you?
Not so much, because we still run neighborhood recycling programs, mostly residential. So we're still, our daily chore is packaging, paper, bottles, cans, plastics, all that kind of stuff. But what we are looking at next are the materials that we haven't reused. The things in those packages, all the products that need to have a longer life and still have some life in them. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at next, along with organics, which is a big issue in California. So.
And do you have curbside access for food scraps for your residential?
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
We've been doing backyard composting for years, and we've put maybe 10, 11, 12,000 people through classes, and we've put many thousands of bins out in backyards. But it's one of those volunteer programs where it rises and falls. We don't have a long, we don't know what the lifeline is of residents. People get busy, they change habits, things like that. So we know that it's creating a positive effect. It may be as much as 10% of our landscape materials that are clipped and dropped in curbside carts that we're keeping off the curb through backyard composting, so we're pretty happy about that. And I think once people get the organic cycles, then they seem to tune in a little stronger on the other cycles of materials, and they start to understand some of the challenges there. So I like to start people in that realm. It's something they understand. They kind of understand food chains. They understand nutrient cycles. It's
tangible, like you can actually see it. So then it really teaches you that things could have a life cycle.
Yeah. And you know, the other direction that we're a little bit leery of and disappointed with actually is that recycling is going to a lot of mixed processing, where we're picking up things in one single bin. So all the wet stuff, you know, the dog, cat stuff and fish heads are going in with dry paper and you know, packages and bottles and cans. And that all has to be sorted out. And the consumers kind of lose contact with the process because they're just throwing it in one bin. The decisions are being made for them somewhere else. And we feel like, you know, that connection that people might have in making better choices when they're buying is going to be softened.
It's almost too convenient.
Too convenient, yeah.
And,
so the questions just
would you say there's, as you're 20 years in, is packaging heading towards more recyclability or towards less recyclability?
We're finding a lot of problems. You know, markets overseas have softened. Manufacturers have done the best they can to lightweight materials, but a lot of times in doing that, they're going to laminates and composites, which make recycling much more difficult. You know, most of the recyclable packaging, unfortunately, isn't in the best and highest nutrition foods. So I'm always a little disappointed that we go to all this trouble to grow, you know, some of the best organic food we can under the, you know, best circumstances, but then we put it in packages that just represent
a contradiction to the...
It's a real contradiction, and I think there's, you know, more chemistry put in the packaging than has been done on the farming itself. So.
You have a part of your life that's different than most recyclers from my point of view, and you and I connected on this. You actually go to EcoFarm, the large West Coast organic farming conference.
Yeah.
And what motivated you, and where?
Well, yeah, I think that anytime we can cross-pollinate these studies, I feel like, you know, here we are on a living, breathing planet, and all the systems that really keep us buoyant and alive and healthy are all about nutrients, all about soils, all about plants, our food, our food systems. And some of the most brilliant people I've met have been really interested in farming, organics, and how to keep those lines really clean. And I'm thrilled that I can go to EcoFarm and meet people that are doing not only are they growing food, but they're restoring streams, they're bringing back habitats. You know, they're looking at engaging people in that process. You know, farm dinners and farm tours, and really showing people how those living systems work. And in cities, we seem to have lost we've lost so much touch with that. We have engineers, we have, you know, attorneys, we have managers, but we don't have a city biologist, we don't have a city farm advisor, we don't have someone that's, you know, overseeing you know, all the landscape chemistry that is being sold.
Paul Connick kind of touched on this. I don't know if you saw his presentation.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. He was talking about how cities need to rethink themselves as villages, multiple villages within a city.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to bring that green vibrancy, the green soul back into to their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for me, it comes back a lot to landscape, because I've had that history. I've worked as a landscaper and a garden coordinator, and so when I go down streets and I see, you know, the properties lined up, and again, it kind of comes back to this issue of, you know, front yards are pure aesthetics. You know, it's an entrance to the house, but it has very little function in terms of food, you know, water capturing, water harvesting, nutrient cycling. You know, basically all the nutrients are vacuumed off the landscapes, put in a green bin, and hauled hundreds of miles away to be composted, to be put in a bag, to be sold back. So to me, you know, we're not showing how compact and how successful these processes can be, and we have control over certain ones. You know, the industrial nutrients, you know, the packaging and things like that, we can't do that at home. But what we can do at home is build brilliant, you know, resilient landscapes that actually feed us. You know, and landscapes don't beg for purified, potable, you know, chlorinated drinking water. They can take, you know, stuff out of our sinks and out of our showers.
Yeah, great,
and we're just so happy to have it.
Gray water, yeah.
Yeah, all the gray water. And so all those things just need to be tightened up and redesigned. And that's where I think we need not only advisors coming to households and saying, well, we can put in weather stripping and windows and insulation in your home. We can also redesign this landscape so that you're capturing water, you're recycling nutrients, and you're getting something to eat. And it's not that hard. It's really a pretty simple equation. We just have to recalibrate how we visualize that and what that curb appeal means.
Back to aesthetics.
Yeah, back to aesthetics. I really see it as kind of a stopping point in so many conversations. Well, that'll never work. Why? Well, it just doesn't look right.
Well, it sounds like you're the one to champion it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And next time, this is the first chapter. Next chapter, we need to talk about bike paths in Burbank, don't we? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Get that going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.